Agentic MDR has already arrived, right? It is like someone said, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. If you're not already running an excellent SOC where everything is triaged in less than 10 minutes and every investigation is of high quality and you have metrics to prove that, it's no longer a new technology. This stuff actually works. It's not a science experiment. It's not maybe someday it will work. It works, and it takes you 4 hours and 2 to 3 weeks to actually see it work. Technology is improving at such a rapid pace. I think more people should take it for a spin and make their own conclusion, whether it works well enough or not.
So welcome. Today I'm with Kumar Saurabh, the CEO and co-founder of AirMDR, who's focused on innovating in the managed detection and response space with an AI native approach. Kumar, I know we'll talk about your solution and how you're innovating there in a minute, but I'd really love to kind of set the table a bit and really kind of get your voice on your origin story. Where'd you start your journeyed career, and what did that look like? The twists and turns that it naturally takes. How did you come about?
Justin, great to be on this episode with you, on this podcast with you. So thanks for having me. And kind of looking at the journey, last 25 years in cybersecurity was actually a serendipity. I grew up in India. I came to New York to do my PhD at Columbia University, out of all things in theoretical computer science. And in a year, I figured out I like building things. I like building products and so on. So I dropped out of PhD, and a startup called ArcSight was like literally within 2 days, someone reached out from ArcSight, say, hey, we saw your resume on some job site. Are you interested in job? And I had graduated at the worst time. Nobody was hiring. Like at that point, Sun and HP, these guys had like hiring freeze. So almost, I showed up, I did the interview. I met Hugh Zamanzi, who was CTO of ArcSight, one of the smartest people to this day.
Yeah.
I was obviously pretty impressed. I didn't have much idea about what the company or what the business prospects are. I just like the people, right, that I interviewed with. And my gut just told me, hey, I'm going to have some fun here. And that was my foray into cybersecurity. And ArcSight had hired a lot of people that were early in their careers, had never been cybersecurity people. And we went to SANS training. I took GCIA and GCIH courses there. But over the last 20, 25 years, I've just learned 95% of what I know is basically just learning on the job, working with people, working with security teams, and just kind of solving problems, and you learn along the way. And ArcSight, luck, right? You ended up at the right place, right time, pre-1.0, very, very early on. So I saw the whole journey. And not many people get to see the journey from, when I joined, we didn't have a 1.0 product. We didn't have a single customer. We had just raised $17 million and burned through it. And we had a tough time raising Series B. So it was a good journey to see what the stars are made of, but we came out of that very strong. And ArcSight was at the top of Gartner Magic Quadrant for a number of years, went IPO, got acquired by HP and all of that. So I find myself super lucky to end up at a company, at a startup straight out of school that goes from zero to IPO.
It must have felt like you won the lottery at that point. Maybe not on day one, but year X. How did that feel?
I did not realize till actually much later how awesome of a break I actually had gotten.
Yeah.
Because it only looks that great in hindsight as you're going through it. Every year was a lot of like getting to the next milestone and then the next quarter and scaling it to the next level and so on. But what was happening at the same time, you're learning a ton of lessons without realizing that you're learning those. Only in hindsight, you realize that, oh boy, that was like one of the best things of that 8 years at ArcSight was the amount of learning you get. And this is what I tell everybody who looks to join a startup. It's not going to be cozy. It's going to be hard work. Not everyday things are going to go your way. So you've got to have a little bit of a thick skin. But boy, the amount of learning and growth you're going to get is going to be tremendous. And if you enjoy that,
I would also imagine, I mean, I've talked with a bunch of founders throughout the many, many years in security, and I've always been amazed the emotional fortitude that they have to have. This is the path I'm going to go. I need to twist and turn, of course, because you're being fed a lot of resistance. No, you can't do it that way. And maybe I'm being overly dramatic. Did you see that at that stage of ArcSight as well?
So one of the things that I saw was at Arc, I tell people I come from the technology side of the house, engineering product, and I encourage a lot of technical folks to actually go out and sell, because I think selling is one of the harder jobs. You get like 99 no's for one. Like I have SDRs on the team. I have real empathy for SDR jobs, right? Because they get told no a gazillion times. And you have to develop like a thick skin to kind of like, it's not a good fit. Nothing wrong with that. You move on to the next where there is a good fit. You take the yeses for what they are, but you have to have the temperament to not let the no's get to you, because you, especially on the sales side. So I think for me, the real learning was the startup that I did after ArcSight, which was Sumo Logic, right? And Sumo Logic was a cloud-based log management system. That was the first time that, especially in the early days, you have to go out and sell people, and everybody was like, "Who are you? We haven't heard of you guys." And it's really hard to get early customers. And that was my first foray. Although I didn't have a sales title or something, it actually gave me a taste of what really it is, especially in the earliest stages when you don't have a brand, you are a nobody, right? How do you go from 0 to 1 in terms of early customers? And that was a humongous learning experience. So no, I think the temperament part, it does, like, if no's get to you, you won't last in this for a year. Like, forget 20 years. Like, it's going to be
a fundraise.
Not right.
You won't even get your seed funding. With the VCs going, nah. You brought up Sumo Logic. Just a small point on that. The job before I went over to venture, we transitioned from an ArcSight, an on-premise SIM to Sumo Logic.
Right.
Loved it. It was easy, transitioned very well. On the on-premise, it took us like 2 years almost to kind of onboard like 15 sources. We did like 30 in a week. I mean, it was just, and then knuckleheads like me are able to create your own dashboard and do it.
Exactly.
So great product, honestly.
Yeah. No, that was a fun, that was like, it's like one thing builds on top of another, right? And I think the reason we got an opportunity to do Sumo Logic was both Christian Beacon, who's a dear friend, was a co-founder, and we started the company back in 2009. Actually, the company got founded in 2010. But both of us were at ArcSight, and we're technical folks, engineers, engineering leads. We were chief architect. I was running analytics team. So we had this idea that you could run ArcSight in the cloud. And later on, we kind of expanded and pivoted just a little bit to Splunk in the cloud. And later on, Sumo always had this DevOps and SecOps going at the same time. And there was a little bit of always a question about identity. Like, are you a DevOps company? Are you a SecOps company? And now, Palo buying Chronosphere and Datadog doing security and all of that. So observability, DevOps, and SecOps are far closer now than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah. Interesting. So what happened after Sumo?
So Sumo, I know this thing about myself, that at the core of what I really like to do is build new things, solve new problems. And so 6 years into Sumo, after Sumo was doing, if I remember correctly, probably 30, 40 million ARR, had a very good team. We had just brought in, Ramin had just joined, who took the company from like under 40 million to 300 million ARR, tremendous growth. I knew we had a very solid team around, and the next 4 or 5 years is going to be about scaling it. And I enjoy the 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 50 journey much more. And I had a spark is like, I saw the early stages, like product like SIM and Sumo and log management systems were not meant to do automation. And I used to, it was meant for use by analysts and people and DevOps engineers, but it was not meant for them to automate entire playbooks. And I saw that problem firsthand. And so I left Sumo to start my first company the next company as a CEO, which was threat hunting automation. And there I realized that, everybody aspirationally wants to do threat hunting, but the TAM for that is very, very small. So it took me and goes back to the point of selling. And you actually have, my advice to many of the technical founders is, building the product and technology is not trivial, but probably the easier of the problems. The harder problem is talking to customers, finding the right problem to work on.
That's right.
And so, yeah.
I'm actually kind of curious about this, the past couple of years, and then of course before that in a lighter degree, but working with founders, going through that seed to A to B kind of phase, mostly. That building a go-to-market team, learning how to sell, can they sell? Can they succinctly put that pitch into a message? Generally, from an engineering background, that's a challenge. It's almost like you know too much, and you have to dumb yourself down to make it simple so people can understand. Did you go through that journey yourself?
Absolutely. In the beginning, I did not understand the value of product marketing. Right, I would have to ask what product marketing actually does. Right, like I understood product management as an engineer. You work with product management. That tells you, if the value of being able to, as you said, very succinctly describe in 30 seconds what you do. And a lot of people who come from engineering, and I had the same problem.
Yeah.
And I'm still studying and getting better at it. Right. It's a constant journey. Right. But I shudder to think, you get into too many technical details. And one of the things is you gotta talk to people about the problems as they see it from their vantage point, not from your vantage point. And I think that was the biggest learning. It's so easy to describe this to anybody. It's not that people don't know the theory of it, but actually doing it well and describing what you do in their language, not your language, I think is one of the first early lessons. And it takes years to learn and get good at it.
It does. And inversely on the go-to-market side, it's for the sales team, how do you do outbound? How do you manage a funnel? And how do you tweak it to kind of build up that engine? Was that also something that you went through as well? Not just the messaging and driving the awareness and brand, but also on the funnel management?
So that is one of the advantages of getting to a CEO role is you have to kind of have the breadth, right? All the way from engineering to product to marketing to sales and in general operations. So it's a in many ways you stop being the master of being really, really good in engineering and you can go very deep and then you have to develop the breadth. And the other part that you have to learn is now you have to let go of it and rely on people who are really good at engineering, really good at marketing, really good at sales, and just trust them that they are going to do the job. That's always a balance. Like you can be too removed from it. You can be too much in the weeds, and neither of them is the right answer. So yes, on the, I have had, I sat at Sumo, I sat through a lot of QBRs, right? So I got my sales training, and John McMahon, who is on the board of Sumo and Snowflake, and is like a legend in terms of like sales methodology and MedPec. And I remember him coming to one of the calls, and he put a slide with a bear and a crocodile, and his question was, "Who's going to win?" And the answer to that question is whether the fight is on the land or in the water. And if it's in the water, the crocodile is going to win. If it's on the land, it's the bear is going to win. And the point there is, as a product, and this is a positioning exercise, right? And you learn that you don't have to win every deal. And at Sumo, we had a very large bank one day call us and said, we'll pay you a couple of $1 million, which in the first year of sales is a humongous deal. One customer saying, hey, I'll pay you $1 million, $2 million, but you got to port the cloud-based solution to our on-prem because we're this huge bank we need. And luckily, the sales guy was like, very nice to meet you. Click. The call ended in 5-10 minutes. So we picked a lane. We said, like, look, we don't, in 2012, 2013, barely 5 to 10 people were willing to go to the cloud. But then you pick that lane and you win that lane. And you're going to lose in the 95%, and that's okay. So that was a master class. I still remember it probably has been 13 years of like market segmentation, positioning. So there are hundreds of these micro lessons you learn on the job. But that one is still, I still remember that to this day.
I'm incredibly jealous now, especially after going through on the VC side and helping build. I see that firsthand, that ability to build it, go to market, and then learn, and then release, and then engineering and messaging, that very difficult soup, if you will. I would actually also say an additional problem is you get that 1 million, one contract, and then everybody says, can you replicate that? And then the probability is no. And then you're going, how do I prove that single killer use case? No, it's split. You've got multiple problems with that. Amazing stuff. I'll ask you one question. My premise is, specifically, you get your seed funding, doing development, you launch, you come out of stealth, you drive that, roughly 1 million in ARR for that A round funding. Historically, the rule of thumb is with that A round funding, you start building out your go-to-market, you get the sales leader, the marketing leader, and kind of drive from there. Seed to A is really founder-led sales, and I'm making a broad generalization.
Right.
My premise is, hey, once you come out of launch, have somebody that can manage a funnel for you, and have somebody that is like a product marketer to kind of get that messaging. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there are literally 3 stages, and it's not, in my mind, it's not 2 stages. And the 3 stages that I look at in the early sales is founder selling. Is like, okay, if you're a founder, you got to sell. Like there is just zero, like, I mean, if you can't sell, get a co-founder who can sell.
Yeah,
right? So
exactly.
You can be very strong at product engineering, but then someone on the founding team has to be able to sell, right? Get your early customers direct. And there is like, sound very black and white on this, but at this point, I don't believe there is any alternative to, you just got to roll up your sleeves. Even if you have been an engineer all your life, you got to find a way to sell. You get your early customers, you get direct feedback. Actually, I have had very good experience in that. You'll get a lot of no's, but there are always people who are just looking to help you. They take a bet. It's a small percentage. You can find them. You'll get 20 no's for 1 yes, or maybe 50 no's for 1 yes, but you got to find that 1 yes and work with them. And Valley is full of people, and they're like, forget the Valley, like their people will help you. There is always that percent of the people that will take a bet and help you with that. But then after that, the second phase is still, because you can sell as a founder does not mean your product and your service is ready to be sold by normal salespeople. Because a founder can sell something that does not mean, and I have seen exceptional salespeople can sell something that you can't replicate in a scale. So I think the second phase is really about, has your product reached a stage where it doesn't require a Superman or a Superwoman, whether it's a founder, whether it's an exceptionally good salesperson, because you can get an exceptionally good salesperson, but you can't find 20 of them.
That's right.
And so you have to you have to develop the product to get it to a point where you can hire 2 more reps and then 4 more reps and then 8 more reps. And so you can just scale the thing. And that's the second phase. And once you figure out, and it's not a black and white, it's not like one day you magically get up, now you are 0 to 1. It's a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
But you can be on one end of the spectrum, you can be on the other end of the spectrum. And that's, the market will give you the data. I have not found another way to do it than to just get in the quote unquote arena and just sell and listen to people's feedback and then just iterate.
Yeah, it's work. It is a lot of work. I remember talking with Aaron Levy from Box, and love Aaron. And he and I were talking about, and I was entertaining the idea of doing a startup. And he's like, you just got to go do it. You just got to jump in and start learning, because the nuances of the scenario, the product, the environment, it's flowing. It's constantly changing. You'll get core themes, of course, but you got to go through it to be able to pick up on those nuances and lessons learned. All right. So you're at Logic Hub, you're driving a SOAR solution. At what point did you say, hey, I'm ready to do another thing. I want to focus in this SOC space, kind of drive the next generation SOC with AI. Is that how you thought about it? Was there a compelling point or a moment?
So in September of 2022, Logic Hub was acquired by Devo. And I remember Devo CEO asking me, Kumar, will you stick around here for a couple of years? And I said, I have no other better idea. Till in November of that year, just 2-3 months after the deal closed and I ended up at Devo, ChatGPT happened, right? And agentic is such an obvious thing today, right? But if you had told people even 2.5 years ago what people take for granted today, you'd find at least 70% people that are not going to believe you. Heck, even today, like what's already possible, what I see when I tell other people, I can always find 40% of the people who are skeptical of things that I have seen firsthand. And there is zero hype around that. It's just possible because they have not touched it. Like, and I tell people is like, if you have not tried Claude Code in last 6 months, you got to go just try it, because it will blow your mind with what's possible. And I was just reading a headline that someone rewrote CUDA into a different platform, NVIDIA's thing, in like 30 minutes. One of the models, Claude Code, did that. Now, I have not tried that myself. I don't know how good it is, but that is where the state of the art is, and it's only going to go better from here. So the intuition or the inkling 2.5 years ago was a lot of things that we need human intelligence to do at the speed of which AI is improving. In 2-3 years, we'll have models. And when people used to say 24 and 2025, people were like, hey, someday the models are going to get smarter. I'll tell you, in the last 6 months or so, for 80-90% of things, and I'm not trying to hype it up, I'm engineer, I want to just see it work. But when something works really well, you got to recognize that, things have changed and there is a much, much, much better way to do things. And then it's like, how do you harness that power that the models, the AI agents and the models that power those actually give you? And that's pretty exciting. And it's constantly evolving and changing. Like the difference between state of art in August of last year and today is at least 2 to 3x better. In terms of just qualitatively, it's just that much better.
It's crazy. So, but why stay in this, SOC, SIM, SecOps kind of world versus I'm going to take and find a problem in human resources? It's not like we don't have problems in human resources, but why stay in this general domain?
So I think it's a problem that I love for some weird reason. I can't explain it. It's like someone asked, why did you get married to the person you get married to? Or there were so many other beautiful people around the world. It's like what connects with you works in weird ways, right? We're still human at the end of the day. So I think the problems at the intersection of data, operations, intelligence, all of that, and security at the end of the day, right? If you think of threat detection or alert refuge, it's a lot of data-driven operation, and it requires a lot of intelligence. So when those three things come together, data, operations, intelligence, any problem that checks off all three boxes somehow becomes super interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I think, luckily for us, like if we hadn't had the AI in 3 years ago, AI didn't work for almost 30 years, right? So it's like in 2021, some people were very excited and seeing where the future is headed, but a lot of people were still not believing that it will have the massive impact or that it already has. That became very obvious to everybody after November, after the ChatGPT. Like everybody can just touch and feel and experience it firsthand, and it became very real. But so for me, security operations and SOC excellence, I talk to a lot of customers, right? And if I define SOC excellence on a 1 to 10, at least a 9 and above, 80-90% of the teams will be 7 or less. Right? And so what that means is, and it's not like they're not smart people working on the problem. The problem is hard enough. The problem is like 5 times, 10 times bigger than most companies have funding to do it, especially smaller companies like JPMC and Walmart, very well-funded companies. But when you walk into a 500-person company, you have one CISO, one security engineer that juggling like 5 things. He's also the compliance person, right? Expecting them to look at every alert that Guard Duty generates and every alert that Okta generates and every alert they get from the EDR. Not happening. It's too big a problem. And so in a space that I know well, there is a very attractive yet unsolved problem, which is like a builder's dream, a founder's dream. Is like, hey, in a space. So if you find a problem that you really love, why go looking for another problem? Solve that problem. You already know that problem, familiar with that problem. And then maybe once I believe we have solved that problem, then maybe I'll go looking for another problem.
Hey, from your lips to God's ear. I've been doing this for 30 years. We still haven't solved it. So hopefully we will, but they still make bank vaults and people still rob them. So I think we'll be endeavoring on this for a while, but I am optimistic because of the advances that we've seen in these contextual understanding kind of capabilities. And so I'm going to put your marketing messaging kind of skills to work here. What is AirMDR?
AirMDR is an AI native agentic MDR, managed detection and response. So the fundamental, so 2 things in that. What does managed detection and response do? Give us all your alerts, give us all your data. We'll find the threats, we'll investigate, eliminate the noise, and we'll help you respond to the 2%, 3% of the alerts that if you don't fix it immediately will turn into a breach or an incident. So we help companies do that. But we do that. I had done that in my prior company, and I had a team of about 12 people running SOC. What we could do with 12 people, we do today with 2 people. Because the work of the 10 people is being done by the AI agents. And one thing that I measure is quality. And the quality is actually better. The speed is much faster. And it's also cost effective. But at the end of the day, if the quality is not there, the speed and cost does not matter. But the models have gotten so good that, and that is why I think all the MDRs and the SOCs over next year or 2 will get transformed into, they will start using agentic. We tried doing this with automation for last 5, 6, 7 years. And I would say less than 5% of the companies actually got their money's worth out of investment in security automation because it's hard. You need engineers to write playbooks, engineers to automate playbooks. Someone has to know what 300 playbooks to write. And there is an immense power that models bring. We don't write, like with one of the large banks we worked, they had 125 playbooks. And it took them 3 years and $2 million worth of investment to build that. And we write 125 playbooks in like less than 2 weeks. And it's all written by AI, written, automated, and yes, supervised and curated by us. So we live in a very, the problem that was so hard 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it just has become like 10 times easier, 20 times easier.
So I'm gonna push the boundaries a little bit. So I'm gonna play the role of my former self as CISO and ask: are you coming in and replacing the SIM, the SOAR? Are you doing detection? Are you writing detection capabilities on top of analyzing the events to identify those attacks? What am I replacing in order to put AirMDR in, if anything?
So I'm starting with the last problem and then working backwards to that. Okay. Right. So if you are getting 300 alerts in a week and you don't look at all of them or even half of them, right? You shouldn't worry about, do I have the highest amount of detection coverage? Because even the detection that you have that generates 300 alerts today, you're not doing anything with that, or you're not doing a good job with that. And I remember it is a while, but Target is a good example. I have friends who worked at Target security team, and they were like, this system was so noisy. It generated 5,000 alerts every week at Target scale. That's not a whole lot. And so they just got immune to it. And when the real thing happened, they were like, oh, it's one of those noisy alerts. Let's ignore it. And then that led to a breach. And that happens very often. So the first problem that we are tackling is the problem of 95% of the alerts that you get are business as usual. You can investigate, you can figure out that doesn't, you have to actually find the 3%, the 5% that really needs an action. But nobody has the time to do that. So that entire alert triage investigation response problem is very well solved with agentic. 96-97% of alerts that we triage in the first round is not, the AI agent is able to handle that. The 3%, some weeks it's like 7%. So it varies between 3 to 7% is what the human SOC does. So that's an immense amount of productivity boost on the alert triage investigation. And then you can go back and you can use AI agents to generate detections. For example, many companies, smaller companies don't even have a detection engineering team. But if you go work for a bank, they will have a team of 5 detection engineers or 7 or 10 detection engineers at a well-funded team. Their whole job is to look at the data you get and write detections. And we have an agent that we simply point to a SIM, say, okay, go look at the Windows logs, or go look at their GitHub logs, or go look at their CloudTrail logs, and tell me what 50 most common scenarios are. And by the way, build me detection rules for those. And it will keep doing that. And relentlessly, every 10 minutes, it will send you a Slack message. Hey, I created a new rule for you. And it tries and does all that. So you can apply the same agentic technology to detection piece of it. So far, I have not touched the SIM layer of it. So we just use whatever SIM people have. If you have a Splunk, if you have Datadog, if you have Sumo, Sentinel, you name it, we'll support any and all data layers. So we have not touched the data layer. We provide a managed SIM, or we connect with the SIM. Where we apply the agentic is, first and foremost, the first problem we want to tackle is don't ignore the alerts. Look at every single alert, and don't look at it with people, look at it with the AI agents, and then figure out the 3%, the 5%, and then have people go through those 3-5% and do that. And then once you have gotten a good grip on alert triage investigation response, then evaluate your detections, because now you have taken care of all the alerts. Now you can afford to put in more detections, look for deeper things, because you have the machinery that can handle 3x the alerts without breaking the bank.
So when you look at and you know you guide me on this. When you look at AI's application, LMs are a subcomponent of AI. You know this very well. Is it all about agentic, or is it really an orchestration of a workflow with other models, kind of like an awaited decision tree where some LMs are best suited and others are like a regular not a regular expression doesn't make sense, but you know, some other algorithm is ilk, or is it really just customized to one curated, very specific LM that you've developed for these stages?
So I think the way I look at it, or the approach that we have taken, and I think it's not something very, in our experience, what we have seen is that the LLMs have gotten very powerful, right? And however, an LLM to an outcome, there is a long path. And I give people the analogy of an engine versus a car. So if I give you an engine, you can't just take an engine and just drive it around, right? You need leather seats, you need the steering wheels, you need headlights, you need the whole package to work, right? And so a lot of people, LLMs are the core engine. And I think even the LLMs that are publicly available, like Anthropic, OpenAI, any of these models that you work with, what I actually do believe that one, they're not perfect. You can make it better with human expertise. But I think what they do, that plus some human expertise, is actually not the bottleneck anymore. The bottleneck is how quickly can you tap it? It's like you might have a lot of oil buried deep within, but if you can't extract it and refine it, it's not very useful. And so the power of the models, unless and until you can operationalize it, it's so a lot of the work, and this is why when we started the company, we picked the route of delivering this as a service. Because what I have seen again and again, right, people will buy, will spend millions of dollars on a Splunk or Sumo or Elastic, and they will collect all of their data, but they're not doing anything with the data. So you're spending $3 million on your SIEM a year, and you have all the data in the world, but you are not able to detect even simple threats, right? So that is where I believe that a lot of work that especially smaller teams will struggle with is how to operationalize the power that you get with LLMs and all the machinery that you need to build around it to get to the outcome. At the end of the day, what many of the security teams want is like, find me bad stuff and fix it before it becomes an issue. Like, it's a very simple, like, detection and response at the end of the day is those two things at the core of it.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of work, a lot of machinery to be built to get people to that point. And I think it might be a fun project for JPMC and Walmart and all of the Bloomberg to take that on because they're very well funded. But if you're a 700 person where you have one CISO, 2 or 3 engineers, you don't have the time or the talent or the bandwidth to actually do a really good job of it. And there, I think it should be delivered as a service. And this is no different than what cloud did, right? It doesn't make sense when we start Sumo Logic, we're a 20% company. It doesn't make sense for us to run our own cloud. We should just consume cloud as a service. And I think 100%, 500%, 1500% companies should consume detection and response as a service. And the bigger guys can build their own because they have the funds, the money, millions of dollars to invest in building this. And that's great. But for the masses, for 1,000%, 1,500% company, it's just that much more cost effective to just consume it as a service.
So I have to ask, we talked about detection. What's the response capabilities of AirMDR? Are you actually going to do what you said? Hey, I'm just going to fix it. Is that future or present state? I mean, what does that look like?
So I think the one thing, and I was talking to one of the Gartner analysts who actually used the term DTIR. And I have not seen many people use that term instead of DNR. And TI is...
Do not resuscitate?
Detection, triage, investigation, and response. So here is what I would say. After having spoken to like literally 100, 200 security teams over the last 2-3 years, everybody asks about, hey, can the machine take the action?
Yeah.
The reality of it is you have to build enough trust in that machinery before you let the machine take the autonomous action. So what are the precursors to that? The biggest place you want to go in, you want to enable human in the loop automation. Can I take the action in one click? That should be the goal. Once you have the necessary confidence that, yes, it makes the correct judgment every single time, and I don't need to wait between my emails and other work I'm doing to get to this point, it introduces a 10-minute delay. This action is very safe. You have to take into account what the risk is, right? If you're simply blacklisting an application, okay. But if you're taking someone's laptop off, or worse, if you're blocking something in your production system, so you have to take into account what's the side effect of it could be. And if the risk is low, automate it. If the risk is high, put human in the loop. And so we have a more nuanced approach to response. It's possible, but just like many things, because it is possible, 95% of the time, it's not the best approach. We recommend people is use human in the loop. One click, let the human be in the control in the driving seat. And then stack the actions by risk and start attacking the low risk things and get them fully automated as you develop the confidence, and then off you go.
Yeah. So at some point when that specific alert, use case, constrained scenario, where the tier 1, maybe tier 2 operator has that comfort zone, they can automatic pipeline. So it's a stepping stone to that fully automated remediation. Makes a lot of sense. Going back to what point you made earlier was, hey, we're not replacing your SIM. That's the data set that we're working on top of to kind of provide this capability. I would assume that requires an integration capabilities to all of the SIM providers. Where are you on that journey? Doing any sort of connector integrations, that's a long tail in a good sense.
Actually, that is one of our superpowers, right? And it actually does not we have integrated with SIMs and systems that we had heard for the first time in less than a couple of days. And it is actually, I refuse to believe that we live in a cloud code age. It's like, no, 3 years ago, even the longest poll is getting the customer to create a service account for us. It takes longer for them to create the service account for us than it takes us to build the integrations with what we need for the use cases.
Yeah.
And the other challenge that we run into, the other challenging parts of it would be that, so one part of it is just provisioning and all of that. But coming back to the integrations, in this day and age, it should not take you months or even weeks, quite honestly. Like the technology has just moved on. Is it much better today? There is no,
So what does the integration pathway, imagine, hey, it's day one, I'm a new customer. Is it, hey, I need 5 hours, I need 5 years? I mean, what does that integration look like? And what do they see? When is that, hey, you're going to start seeing results? And from your current customer base, what does good look like? What are those result benchmarks that you're starting to see?
So I think what we have seen, the longest poll so we do 3-week POCs, 2 to 3 week POVs.
Yeah.
And typically if you come in with if you sit down and say, okay, here are the top 5 sources I want to integrate with. And you come to a meeting with those 5 credentials, or you can self-provision it. It will take you less than an hour. it will take you more time, or the IT team has to go create the account. So I'm going to create a Jira now. For 3 days, you're waiting for someone from the IT team to provision an account from you. That is where the longest time it takes. Now, every once in a while, you'll be like, hey, I want to integrate with this system. Maybe there is a new startup coming out with a new solution and they have APIs and all, but we have never worked with that company or the product before. Great. We can build an integration literally in a day or 2 days. And most of the time is actually testing, making sure, troubleshooting sometimes, all of that. But that integration window, the time to integrate to your entire stack has gone down a lot. And the ability and the time it takes to support a new product that you don't have integration has gone down from months and weeks to literally a low single-digit days. A week is a very long time to integrate with a new product, right? And so we guarantee 100% coverage, but as long as it's not using some, SOAP-based XML, some API from 1990s or early 2000s, it's like arcane products. Okay, those we won't do, but every modern product with a modern API, it's really, Justin, it's really quick to integrate with those. Awesome. So typically within a day to a week, and it really, the long pole, the difference primarily is how long does it take for the customer to create the service account, the credentials that we need. In terms of hours, it actually takes is like anywhere from 1 hour to 3 to 4 hours. If you have 10, 12 systems, it might take 4 hours. If you have 5, 6, it might take an hour. That's typical range. And then within a week, you should start seeing alerts being triaged, first by the AI analyst and then with the SOC. And the remaining 2 weeks, we adapt and fine tune it to your preference and to your enterprise, because an alert might be very alarming in a different company, but here it's business as usual because you have architected it a different way.
So what do results look like? So the tier 1, tier 2 analysts, a whole bunch of work is being taken off their plate. Are there efficacy numbers or accuracy numbers in a results model that you're starting to see, or maybe TBD at this point? I don't know.
So that is something that we are just coming out with. And internally, one of the things that we do, and one of the things we have observed in the last 6-9 months is the most important thing people care about is quality, right? The speed doesn't, like one easiest way, I can just write a script and close all the tickets in less than 2 seconds. My MTTI is 2 seconds. Is that amazing? No, it's bad because your quality is really bad. Your accuracy is bad. You have not looked at anything. Now, quality is the most important metric. People say our quality is really good, but then you ask the question, how do you measure really good quality? And you get blank stares back. And so we have fixed that problem. So we will be releasing very soon tooling that can actually score the quality of the investigation, give you numbers, give you dashboards. That is truly one of the things has not been done before. At least I'm not aware of somebody actually having metric. A lot of people just talk about MTTI, MTTR. That's the speed, but not the quality. Some people talk about efficacy and accuracy, but it doesn't, because 99%, 95% of it is a false positive. You can close everything and you'll still be correct 95% of the time. So that metric that is not that meaningful. The real meaningful is if you spend 20 minutes going through a case and say 1 to 5, what would I give this investigation? And we were doing for 3 months that process manually, proactively for our customers. And then it hit us one of the days. It's like, we can automate that thing. We can write an agent that does what my co-founder does every week. It takes 30, 40 cases, and like a high school math teacher goes and grades every case. Is like, okay, this is a 2 out of 5. We've got to fix this. Or, hey, this one is really good. This is 4 or 5 out of 5. And we have just automated that entire process. So I think for the first time, we'll be releasing like a quality metric for the SOC, for alert triage investigation and response. And you can, and we're planning to even open source it. So you can just run it yourself and take the cases that you are getting from your MDR provider or the SOC or the automations that you have built. Just run it through this, and it will tell you, oh, you got 66% because you should have answered these 8 questions, but you only answered 3. You didn't look at these 5 other things. So you don't get 80, 90% or 9 out of 10 score. And it highlights what are the gaps you have. And maybe the gaps are because you don't have the data. You're not collecting octalogs. You don't know whether someone used MFA to log in from here or not. And you can't correlate different pieces of data. Or you want to go look at, is this normal behavior for last 30 days? But you can't get to the data. You can't analyze the data fast enough. So there might be a variety of reasons. So not only it gives you that you got 66%, but it tells you all the things that you didn't do. And I was showing an early prototype to one of the customers, and he's like, this is such a great tool. I have automation engineers. I just did not know where the gaps are. Yeah. And so this is a great way to expose the gaps so the security teams can proactively go and fix those.
Interesting. I want to go back to just kind of pick on one point, the detection capabilities, because, the IOCs there's constantly new IOCs coming out, and new, more fine grain, detection rules for this vulnerability, that attack model, whatever it is. So we generally have like Styx Taxi, open source IOC feeds going into our SIM for that detection, and then humans, start creating their own and new ones within that SOC, tier 1, tier 2. Is that a process that is that data feed analysis into your detection capabilities, or is it, and then have like a supervised learning kind of reinforcement on the back end when the human, not fully automated, goes false positive, that feedback in, or is it a different model than that?
The model is very similar. I think threat intelligence we can look at as one of the data sources like IOCs and things like that. Yeah. Typically, what I've found is that most of the bad behavior, right, is a combination. It takes, you almost end up building a story. And when you're looking at IOC, that might be one data point, one trigger. And it might be like a tripwire that goes off. And many times those things have a very high false negative rate. In other words, if you get that hit, something bad is going on. Mm-hmm. But there are so many bad activities that will not trigger an IOC, right? Mm-hmm. And we find that all the time, right, in detection. So I think it's you got to cast a lot of, like, some Tom Cruise movies, like there are thousands of lasers going to trip someone. You should look at detection in that way. It's like no particular detection. Like you got to look at behavior anomaly detection. It's like sometimes people are coming through legitimate things and not tripping anything, but it's like, why am I getting a login from Delhi? At 3 a.m. in the morning, my entire team is in US. I've never seen this, but it's coming through a legitimate account. And so you got to be able to look at that more carefully. So I think false negative rate with the IOCs is pretty darn high. But again, their false positive rates are very close. So my takeaway in this is there are a variety of techniques that you got to apply on the detection side. Yeah. And there is no silver bullet or just one approach that does that. But that is the process of it. Like, what's the hypothesis? What's the data? What the rules you're writing? Which rules have a high false positive, false negative? How do you compensate for that and all? It's a lot of work that goes in. And I think the only thing that is like, hey, we can do 10x more or 10x more efficiently, right? So you would have needed 5 people, 5% detection engineering team, and another 5% to do threat hunting. Well, you can probably get the same productivity with one person with a lot of agents and all today. So it opens up, it gives us more things we can do with the same amount of time at the end of the day. So with your customer base, you've been at this a while. Oh my God, I didn't expect that to be to happen in this customer environment, or the use case was different than you initially expected, or hey, wow, this is having a really interesting byproduct effect
on the SOC teams as a result of this capability being? Any shocks and awes in a positive way that you've seen in your customer base?
So we released a V2 of our AI agent in September. And when I was using my SOC team, they were telling me, Kumar, we used to get about, and this was probably 10 months ago. So we were already doing about 85% of triage manually, but our SOC team still had to go through 250 alerts on average every week. And when we released that V2, the SOC team told me the number of things that we have to look at is down to 50. So we saw an 80% reduction after an initial 80% reduction. And that was like, this is just like, when I used to say we do 80% manually, some of the investors a couple of years used to say, don't say 80%, that seems too high. Yeah. And now every once in a while, I bring up the product, like application, the production app that aggregates metric from all our data. And I show people, and very often it will be either 94% or 96% of the work being done by AI agents that does not require human touch. And then a lot of people would say, hey, but the quality can't be that good. I don't believe the quality. And then we bring up cases and we say, like, read this, 1 to 5, what would you give? And we pick 5 of them at random on a 30-minute call, and we start getting 4s and 5. Now, truth is, it does take a little bit of fine-tuning for a couple of weeks. So on day 1, without any feedback, without any fine-tuning, does it produce 4s and 5s out of 5? No, it doesn't. Because every environment is different, and you have noise and you have preferences. So, but if you fine tune it for 2 weeks, and it doesn't even, like, you can start getting into 4 or 5 zone after a week, but definitely in 2 weeks, you'll start hitting 4 and 5 zones. So it's the alert triage investigation and response, I think, is hitting at a point where it's clearly much better than what 95% of SOC teams out there are running today. And this is why we built a tool, because I can say this all day long, but we want to give people a tool so that they can measure it. That's right. Measure the quality and just compare. Speed is easy, right? I can write a script. Speed is easy. Cost is easy. You can drop the price. I think quality is the main thing, but it was so hard to measure.
I completely agree. I have to ask, especially, I remember going through the complete list of vendors at RSA last year, 2025, and I'm going to make up some dramatic number, but, directionally accurate. I think in the startup kind of list, it was 70% of AI plus SOC, something in that ballpark.
Right.
How do you differentiate? What is your point of view on, hey, this is how we differentiate against competitors?
So I think a lot of 2 bits of differentiation. I think we might be very small single-digit companies in taking this approach. And the name itself is like AirMDR, and there is the word MDR in there, right? So the approach that we have taken is that, especially for the segment we go after, we don't want to throw over another tool, another software, another platform. We want to deliver the outcome. And the outcome is detection and response. Like, CISOs buy all of these SIMs and UB and SOAR and this and that, all of these technologies, because at the end of the day, they want detection and response to work really well. That's the outcome. Everything else is a how to get there. And so we from the get-go, our North Star has been, we want to deliver the outcome as a service, not as a service in terms of we'll bill you by the hour or we'll spend time with you. No, it's outcome as a service, is detection and response as a service. And service in the sense people consume cloud is like, it will just get delivered to you. Measure us by the outcome. The approach, the AI SOC is the approach that we are taking. I think 95% of the startups that are doing AI SOC are doing it as a not, and I think it's changing. It might be changing because I honestly have seen that, especially in our segment and the customers we target, 100% of the time, when we have gone against an AI SOC platform, we have won. And it is because of the approach that we are taking, is we are delivering the outcome as a service, not a tool. One of these stories comes to mind is the AI SOC platform that they tried did not produce the results they wanted. Is like, okay, when is it going to produce? Oh, it will take 3 months for it to learn. It's like, no customer has that patience. And who has to do the training and fine tuning is the customer. It's like, nope, I don't. It's like a free puppy. It's like, nope, it takes a lot of work. No, thank you very much. Like, I just want the outcome. So I think we are very differentiated in the way that we're providing an agentic managed detection and response. And then we compete a lot with traditional MDRs who are not running. Like, you got to ask this: when was the last time your MDR gave you a 50% discount? And if they haven't, then are they really transferring the value of agentic to you? Have they given? Has your metric on MTTI improved by 3x in last year? If you haven't, then you're not doing agentic well. Do they have a quality metric? Can they prove that their quality is really good? And if they can't do a POV in 2 weeks and 3 weeks so that you can experience this, you have to sign and then hope that they deliver. So I think this entire doing it as an agentic native MDR, I think there are very few companies. I can count them on my hand. I don't even need all my fingers to do that. So truly agentic MDR, there are very, very few people. But I think for the segment that we are going after, that is the best approach. It's best for the customer.
Interesting. What is the one takeaway that that hook, that one takeaway you would like our audience to really walk away with?
Agentic MDR has already arrived, right? It is like someone said, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And I think if you're not already running an excellent SOC where everything is triaged in less than 10 minutes and every investigation is of high quality and you have metrics to prove that, I think it's no longer a new technology, right? 2025 was the year where it was like only for the early adopters. I think I'm hoping that the technology is at a point where it will probably become mainstream this year. And it's actually, it's like self-driving, right? I had my co-founder, when he came to the city last RSA, he would not get into an Waymo. I'm like, you don't have to fear for your life. It's actually safe. Get in a Waymo. And I think the takeaway for that I would want people to walk away is like, this stuff actually works. It's not a science experiment. It's not maybe someday it will work. It works, and it takes you 4 hours and 2 to 3 weeks to actually see it work. So you got to get your hands. And one side is like, if you have written code anytime in the last 20 years, try Claude Code, because you can build things that you could not build in 2 months in like an afternoon. Right? And these are things where you have to actually experience it to believe it. Like I had a friend who kept on telling me about this Claude Code. I don't buy it. Till I got some time over the holidays after Christmas. I was like, I have an entire afternoon. And once I got started, I spent like 3 days building a lot of apps that I always wanted to build, but just didn't have the time to build it. And now you can have coffee, do emails, and let Claude write its code. So some of these things, you just have to try your hands on it and make your own decision. I tried Windsurf several months, 8-9 months ago, and got stuck. And I have, for last 1 month, I've been trying Claude Code. It works every single time. So technology is improving at such a rapid pace. I think more people should take it for a spin and make their own conclusion, whether it works well enough or not.
Kumar, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. How should people wanting to get in touch with you? What's the best way, you or somebody in the company, to kind of learn more and dig in?
I go through every single email of mine. So just send me an email at kumar@airmdr.com and check out airmdr.com. I'd love to. This topic is near and dear to my heart, as you can probably tell. Even if you want to have a chat, I would love to just reach out.
Well, be careful, because that SecOps world is near and dear to my heart, and so I could talk about it all day. Thank you so much.
Justin, thank you so much for having me on.